Hello and welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week through news and headlines ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I'm Daniel, and your other host this week is Millennial Mike. Welcome back, Millennial.
Good to see you guys. Good to hear you guys, or good to be heard. These show notes are packed, so it's going to be fun. We're talking for a long time.
And this is the very anticipated reaction to the new slate, the slate of DC Studios films. But first, if this is your very first episode of the show, the way we format it is we go through this week's news, and then we end it with the Brocat Block, which is what Millennial Mike and I have been up to since you last heard us. So let's jump right in and explore sector number 548. So this first one Bobby shared on our Discord. It is from AMC, who are introducing a new dynamic model that is priced similar to stadiums. They're calling it the Sightline at AMC. And basically it's a way for them to charge more for the best seats in the theater. So the less desirable seats will cost less. There's going to be 3 tiers to it. The standard sightline are the all-common seats, which will remain at normal cost. Value sightline are the front row and accessible seating tickets, which are going to be at a reduced cost.
Also known as the sideline. I'm joking.
I mean, it's true, though. They're the less desirable ones, reduced cost, but you can only get these if you're a Stubbs member. And then there's preferred sightline, which is the middle of the theater seats that everyone wants, that one is going to have an upcharge. But again, if you're an A-list member, you can reserve the preferred seats at no additional cost. So basically normal cost. And right now, these ticket prices apply to all showtimes after 4 p.m. at participating locations. Is this the right move for trying to generate more income for the theater?
That's a great question. I mean, I think it really depends basically on what the difference in cost between the charge for a standard seat, right, and the quality seats are basically. Like, that's where it's gonna, because like basically anyone who buys a ticket is going to go for a whatever seats available if they want to go see the movie and there aren't any seats available, right? So that's like never been a choice. Like no one would ever think twice about paying the same amount for a worse seat because they just want to get in, right? But what people would consider is having to pay more for a better seat. So the amount of difference there is between a quality middle of a preferable seat is probably what's going to really make the difference. Also, I'm thinking there could be some negative effects too, because a lot of times, like basically just being early, like if I get my tickets early, then I'm rewarded for being like enthusiastic about their movie. Right. But if it doesn't matter anymore about how early I am or how quick on the draw that I am, and all it matters is how much I'm willing to pay, then, or if that's less of a concern, then people might stop being as enthusiastic about trying to get the good quality seats as soon as possible. So there's a lot of different things to consider. I mean, obviously if the cost is barely that much, it might not change. But if it's a significant amount more, then people are going to be like, well, I'm not going to like jump on the good quality seats as soon as I can because I might not even want to pay that amount in the first place. I might already be expecting to get the value seats, and I know that those aren't going to be taken anyway. Or maybe they will be taken because people might go for the value seats first. I don't know. It's a lot of possibilities.
I have a couple of problems with their whole program here. One of them is that this is all just a masked way for them to charge more without offering you more. They're just they're increasing the prices. That's all this is. And I get that they're saying, well, if you get the less desirable seats, you're actually saving money. But how many theaters are packed these days enough, unless it's an event film like Avatar 2, where you would maybe consider, okay, well, maybe I'll just get the reduced seats because it's not that big a deal and I'll save a little bit of money, as opposed to these days, you can pretty much, I went to go see The Whale and we had no problem getting middle seats and the theater wasn't even packed. So it's like, okay, now if I'm going to see The Whale, I don't want to pay an extra whatever amount is just to sit in my preferred seats of the middle. And then I'm sitting there on the sidelines and there's no one in the theater anyway. There's maybe
Mhm.
four other of us, and it's kind of ridiculous to me because I don't want to be an A. It's a way for them to upsell their A-list club, which I don't want to be tied into that. I used to be the Cinemark member, but it turns out that we weren't going enough to justify the monthly cost of Cinemark. And I was on that program for a few years. It's just recently we got off of that because it is a further drive for us to get to that particular theater. And then these days, some of the more local ones, we can get in for a little bit cheaper and not worry about the drive. So I don't see any benefit to this. If theaters were a lot more packed, if we were in a state of, okay, people are going back into theaters for more than just event films, and we're actually having trouble with keeping the volume, it's kind of like pre-pandemic numbers, let's say, then they can probably get away with, well, we're going to raise the prices on maybe all tickets. That's what they should have done. I think that would have made them more money in the end. But unfortunately, this complicates things for the consumer. We don't like to have yet another step or another barrier for us to go see a movie. I think this is all a big mistake, and thankfully they're not rolling this out theater wide throughout the whole chain. They're just trying it out in a few theaters and select ones. But I think once they see that that doesn't work, then they might not roll it out.
Well, I will say that the fact they're even thinking about this definitely, I believe, tells us that they're more invested in the cinema, in theatrical releases now, more so than they were, a year ago or even less. It seems like, because it's funny, I've been going to, we'll see, what was the last thing I saw in theater? I saw Babylon in theater, and they actually like checked our stubs. There were so many times where I would buy my ticket and I would just walk in. Like there's so many theaters where I would just walk in, like no one was actually like they're doing that again now at the theaters that I'm going to. So that tells me like, hey, they're getting back on the ball. Like they actually care. And this also tells me that too. And I also do agree with you that if they are doing this for all theaters and not just like, or all movies, not just the big releases, then the movies where no one wants to see, you're still going to be charged for something that, and then that would also beg the question, are they going to enforce that? And how heavily are they going to enforce that? So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, if I go see The Whale, for example, again, and there's no one in the middle seats, it's like, fuck it, I'm just going to go move and sit there. People are doing that already with the reserved seats. How many times have I come up to my seats and someone's already sitting them and I'm like, hey, I got those seats, and then they move awkwardly, right? It's really weird, but people are already just choosing whatever seats they want. So how will they enforce this throughout the entire movie?
Yeah, I don't think that they really can. Yeah, it's not going to be profitable, and if it's not unprofitable, it probably just won't really make much of a difference at all in the end.
Like I said, I think it would have been better to just raise it up an extra dollar or two. And I honestly think selling 30 tickets at an extra dollar is going to make them more money than selling, maybe 10 in the middle seats for an extra 4. It just doesn't make sense to me. And again, it overcomplicates the business, which is never a good thing for consumers. And maybe they'll walk it back, but someone that definitely walks something back is Netflix, as one of their most controversial updates might not end up happening. A report from The Streamable indicated that Netflix has walked back the specifics, removing the new password sharing restrictions from their website. So the info detailed new rules that would block devices used outside of the home of the primary Netflix user unless they verify their accounts on a monthly basis. And a Netflix spokesperson explained, quote, "For a brief time yesterday, a Help Center article containing information that is only applicable to Chile, Costa Rica, and Peru went live in other countries. We have since updated it," end quote. I like how they BS'd their way through it and went, oh, we're just kidding. We meant just those countries, those territories.
And there was someone else who did something like this recently. I forgot who it was. There was someone else walking something back, but I don't remember what it was. But yeah, it's a standard PR, corporate, it's funny because Netflix, I think this is all at this point in the game. I just feel like every time there's something like this is happening, it's not like an accident. It's not like a mistake. They're not like, oh my God, they're not like scrambling around with their hair on fire or whatever. I just feel like everything is kind of just planned. I just feel like we're living in a simulation, you know? And it's like this news is also transient. It's like we won't even remember this like in a few days,
Sure.
probably. So it's like they probably know that and they just tested it. Like, hey, like if people hear this news, right, will they react very strongly to it, kind of strongly? Like, do we need to wait a little bit and then reintroduce it later on or make modifications and do it again? Or that's what I think about it. It's all just a simulation. We're in the matrix.
This was also one of those decisions that really started to come out of when they had that quarterly loss when they pulled Netflix from Russia, and then all of a sudden they had this drop in subscribers. This came out of that, and they were like, we're going to start implementing this sometime next year, just to tell their shareholders, right? This is another way in which we're going to generate revenue. More people are going to sign up. We're going to get our subscription numbers up. And since then, they've had positive quarterly earnings again. So I think they're in a safe space where they can go, okay, well, maybe later we'll do this. But I did ask on Twitter, and I want to know your response too. If you do have Netflix now, one, do you pay for yourself or do you use someone else's? And if it's the latter, would that have caused you to then subscribe yourself to Netflix? Or would you have gone through the hoops of renewing it every month, verifying it every single month?
Yeah, I canceled all my subscriptions a while back just for the sake of finances. And I haven't really missed anything. I mean, I like the feeling of supporting the content and watching it officially. Like, it always feels better, like watching a new show when it comes out officially. But it doesn't feel that much worse doing it other ways. you know?
Mhm.
So yeah, I can't really say that this has really affected me a lot. I think eventually they will do something like this. I mean, I don't actually have a lot of faith in the average consumer that they are going to be so on the ball, so sharp with all this stuff that they're going to hear this and they're going to actually just purely out of principle cancel their subscription. But people they're not very principled,
No.
so they're not going to do it, and they let companies like this kind of just tell them what to do, and they're okay with that, and that's how it's always been.
And because of that, I think what would have happened, yes, there's the vocal internet that would have said, all of them were saying, we're going to boycott Netflix, we're going to cancel our subscription, try to make them nervous, right? And I do think that if they had gone through with this, I know Kelly and I discussed it. And I'm like, I could verify it every month, but honestly, after a while, I could not be bothered. I probably would be like, you know what? It's not worth it to do this every month just to get access to Netflix. It's not that valuable to me. It's once again putting a barrier between myself and the service. So we probably would have let it go. Even right now with Hulu, my mom changed the password to Hulu. So right now I don't have access to it. I can text her and ask her, hey, what's the new password? But again, I can't be bothered because there's nothing on Hulu that I have. I love Chef Ramsay. I love all his shows. But even that won't get me to send the text to my mom and say, can you please send me the new updated Hulu password so I can sign back in? And that's only one time that I have to do it every so often. Me having to do it every month, I'm not going to do that with Netflix. And other people are not going to go do that either. And what would have happened is their viewership would have gone down. They would have freaked out. Film companies would have said, hey, how come we're not getting millions of eyeballs on our content? And it would have been a big PR disaster. And I think that could still happen if they choose to implement this in the future.
hmm So you think that them actually saying that they were going to do it did have an effect?
They were vocal online, right? But I don't know if that's the reason why they changed their mind on this. It could be, but I think it's more that the quarterly earnings were positive, and since they had already put this out there, they kind of followed through with it in certain territories. But for now,
Hmm.
since the numbers are good, they probably were like, maybe even their investors might have said, or shareholders, we're getting a bunch of bad PR about this password thing, and earnings are good. Let's not kill that, and this could potentially hurt us. So I think that's more or less what changed it.
Well, okay, but when is it ever a good time to make a bad decision? You know, it's like if the earnings were good and they made a decision that could make their good earnings less good, then that wouldn't be something that they would want to do. If their earnings were already bad, they would be focusing on trying to do things that could make their Like, when is a safe time to make a risky decision?
When
I
earnings
think
are
that
bad, because then they could go, okay, that didn't work.
I guess so. I guess so. I tend to think, I tend to think that I kind of believe that too, because in general, it's like companies like to have something to blame for their own ineptitude.
Yes.
So if they have just bad earnings from a variety of other things, like, oh, people just aren't subscribing because they're, inflation or this or that or lockdowns or, it's less people subscribe this time of year and everything kind of just came to a head or whatever. And now they can do something risky. And then if something doesn't work, then they can just say, oh, well, it was, it was because of this other factor, or it's typically low or at this time. And yeah, so it's really, they definitely like to shroud their bad decisions in other factors for sure. Yeah.
I want to know if you on the other side, if they had implemented this password change, would you have canceled your subscription, not maintained it, not renewed it every month if you were using someone else's password? Let us know on Twitter or at thereasonsimbroke.com. Here we have another company that may be on the losing end of money, kind of like Warner Brothers is. They made some similar moves. A Disney source told Bloomberg that pressure to rein in streaming costs could result in the studio selling movies and shows to other companies. Disney's streaming division posted a $1.5 billion loss in the third quarter last year, which pushed the board to remove Chapek and bring Iger out of retirement. That wasn't the sole decision, but that definitely did not help. With the launch of Disney Plus, not only did they start pushing all of their biggest releases directly onto the platform, but they also decided not to release any Disney Plus originals on physical media. So far, Disney has refused to comment on this report. So again, very familiar to what Warner Brothers Discovery is doing now with their DC properties.
This is just basically kind of like an inside, like it's not really guaranteed. It's not really certain. It's just kind of, hearsay basically, right?
At the moment, yeah, it is an insider that told Bloomberg from Disney, supposedly. Bloomberg's pretty good, but since they are not great on earnings right now, Disney hasn't been for a little bit. It's definitely a good possibility that this might happen.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot of different ways that Disney could probably make some money if earnings are on a slight lull. Because when has Disney ever made an extreme decision in either the content, like the kind of content they wanted to release, or an extreme decision on even greater, their IPs? Like, Disney has always been completely locked down with that, and they control the narrative better than any other studio in recent history has controlled the narrative. I extraordinarily doubt that if they didn't want to sell something, they wouldn't do it. I don't. I'm sure there's got to be another way for them to recoup costs on the lost costs, because the whole idea is that they don't have to listen to what the box office says or what fans say or what audiences say, because they have a whole storehouse full of extra just disposable income that they could just throw at stuff. So I don't think we're going to see any major IP sales. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I think what they're saying more is that not necessarily that they're going to sell off an IP, but more what like Sony's doing with Disney or what Warner Brothers Discovery is doing with Amazon, of use our characters and pay us some money, but we retain all of that. But you guys can make shows under our guidance, especially Disney. Like, it would have to be under strict guidance.
Interesting. I mean, who would? Okay, that is interesting. So basically, rent out the IPs to other people. I mean, I wonder if that would be beneficial. Like, for instance, is there any other platform that could possibly offer Disney any more value than they already have with their platform? Like, if something's on Disney Plus, am I going to go over to Paramount and be like, hey, put this on Paramount Plus, or hey, put this on Peacock and we'll share? Like, do you really think Peacock or Paramount Plus is really going to give them any additional value? That, like, if you're not subscribed to Peacock, or if you're not subscribed to Disney Plus, you're not subscribed to Peacock. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, I guess what you're asking is, would they pull any extra subs by having original Disney content on, say, Amazon Prime or Paramount or any of that?
I don't know. It's a good question. I kind of doubt it. I kind of doubt it. And I think that the potential, because Disney has a very difficult time working with its own creators that are paid under their own payroll.
That's
Okay.
true.
So to get it all looped up into contractual gobbledygook and potentially risk more confrontations with other creators that they don't have full fiscal authority over. I think that's not something that Disney would want to do.
When you put it that way, there would be a lot of conflict there, a lot of change and control of what they're actually using or buying, renting an IP for. Like, does anyone have an idea for an original, whatever, Mickey Mouse show? And it's like, yeah, we'd like to host that. We'll pay for it. Just let us use the characters and we'll put it up on the thing. Yeah, you're right. Disney would have a big problem with it. Would absolutely be at least a
Yeah.
lengthy process on getting all of that stuff approved.
They're having an issue with Sony and because Sony is kind of they're really working Disney over with their thing. I mean, they're not saying much about it because they don't want to seem like they're on the losing end of that, but they kind of are. I mean, they're not totally losing, but it's not really. Disney would not prefer to share Spider-Man with Sony if they had the opportunity. This is something that it's better than the alternative of not having Spider-Man at all. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see, but I don't think that Disney is ever going to surprise us in any way, especially not when it comes to their most valuable IPs. But
that's true. I guess we'll see how things unfold as the rest of the year goes on, and I'm sure next quarter earnings will determine some of that. Supposedly, what I was reading on this is that during their next earnings call with Iger, they're supposed to announce this thing of like sending out their IPs or renting out their IPs to other streaming services or companies. So in a few weeks, we should at least know one way or the other if those are the plans. Liam Neeson, who starred in the Disney Plus, from what I hear, they brought him back for Qui-Gon Jinn in one of those Star Wars shows. He was asked about returning to the world of Batman, as he was Ra's al Ghul, as they called him Ra's al Ghul in Batman Begins, if he would come back in future movies. And this was in an interview with Men's Health. His response was, quote, "No, I wouldn't. And I hear the latest Batman is like 3 hours long. Hello?" End quote. And he said this before jokingly making a snoring sound.
See, this is the thing, right? DC is a joke. It's a joke at this point, and no one wants to work with DC because they don't believe that even if they... Okay, so if I was like a famous actor and I had the opportunity to work with a franchise that I liked or I thought was valuable in any kind of way, right? I might think, okay, this franchise is suffering right now. I might be able to revive it. And if I revive it, then all the notoriety and all that bargaining power is in my hands, right? But at this point, I've seen, because what was what Al Horn? No, not Al Horn. Was it? What was the guy? Justin Lin? Is it? He was going to be the DC studio president, and he's like, "Nah, I'm not doing it." And then you hear these things from like actors all the time about DC, and I think that the reason is for that is because they don't believe that it can be saved. There's something so rotten about DC that it's a complete joke. It's toxic, and no matter how many times that you completely go nuclear on the executives, there always is some ugly, nasty force inside of the DC, lot that keeps magnetizing all of these wackos. It's just a joke.
And it's like it was said before, apparently several people like Lynn and also Joker director Todd Phillips was offered the role of the head of DC Studios, and he also turned it down. So it's coming out that Gunn was, as we covered a few months ago, bottom of the barrel when it came to the head of DC Studios.
Yeah, they asked, well, it's funny, they asked Kevin Feige.
Yeah.
And it's like, which is funny, because imagine asking Kevin Feige first and then asking James Gunn. So you ask all your internal people and they say no. Basically, what do they ask? They asked a previous DC executive and he's like, no. So they went from executive and then they went to director, which is Todd Phillips, right? So they asked a DC director And he said no. So then they asked a Marvel executive. It's like, Feige, you want to come? It's like, no. And then they asked a Marvel director. It's like, it's like
What's next? Actors, right? Hey, Ben, come on, Ben Affleck, come back.
It's like pretty soon it's going to get down to DC fan and then Marvel fan.
Would you take a millennial? And millennial says no.
I mean, I don't want to be like I don't want my life on the line for things that aren't even in my control.
Sure, that's true. It's insane, and good on Liam Neeson for I did like that little jab that he took at the Pattinson film, but I don't see any of that happening. I don't see him, and I know they're talking multiverse, and Gunn is talking about bringing back Henry at some point in the future. Maybe he was just saying that, but they're talking multiverse, so people are excited about it. Like, oh, that means they can use Christian Bale again if they wanted to later on, and that's why they're asking people like Liam Neeson, he's already up there. I don't see him playing Ra's al Ghul anytime soon, especially not in 10 years when the big crisis event happens, whatever they're doing. So it was kind of a silly question for them to ask Liam Neeson and for us to kind of read. But I just really like that. He's like, yeah, even the new Batman, fuck that shit.
Mm-hmm.
And someone who was asked about, this was apparently okay. This was not a problem that they said a negative thing about the Batgirl canceled film. That was Studio's co-head Peter Safran. He was asked by Variety if he had any comment on the canceled Batgirl film. He said, quote, "Batgirl's a character that inevitably we will include in our story. On the Batgirl front, it's not about late in the process of the film getting canceled. I saw the movie, and there are a lot of incredibly talented people in front of and behind the camera. But that film was not releasable, and it happens sometimes. The film was not releasable. I actually think that President and CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, David Zaslav, and the team made a very bold and courageous decision to cancel it because it would have hurt DC," end quote.
So what you're saying, it's unreleasable.
Well, when he said this, then all of a sudden the Batgirl fans and the quote-unquote real DC fans were like, oh, well, all right. None of them got pissed off at them, but when Zaslav did it, they called for his fucking head.
This is the thing, right? I don't know. I really don't care. It's at best, it offers some kind of entertainment because it's like, oh, this thing that people that I don't like, that a thing that they liked got canceled, and now I get to laugh at them. That's pretty much. It's mean. I know it's mean spirited, but I'm tired of this, man. I'm sick and tired of it. So it's just pure entertainment as far as I'm concerned. That's all I got to say about that.
What's crazy to me still is that aside from the obvious, they can't release it because it's already a tax write-off, and it would, I don't know if it's then illegal or they would have to give all that money back if they chose to release it. But people seem to forget that this was a post-Flash film that was initially an Emmerich and Hamada production of after the Flash, the Snyderverse is erased, and Supergirl is the Superman of the universe, and Michael Keaton is the Batman of the universe. He's the Batman in this world, and then he interacts with Jim Gordon from the Snyderverse. So basically the universe folds into itself and retroactively rewrites the whole universe so that they keep just the characters and actors that they want to keep into contract, and that's the new universe. So just by that alone, the plans that Gunn and company already have in place don't cater to that continuity anymore. So it wouldn't even make sense for them to release it from a plot standpoint, because audiences would be like, wait a second, why is Michael Keaton here all of a sudden? Because all of that is written out of the Flash movie from what I'm hearing. They've now rewritten it and reshot it a third time so that it leads into the Gunn universe. So none of this takes place anymore.
This has been my take on it from the beginning till now, right? In the beginning, I wanted everything to be oversaw by Zach to the point where everything felt like it worked together, right? Did everything have to be like pristine as far as the timeline or whatever? It's like not necessarily. There are ways around that. You could just, but I wanted everything to have kind of like, this is what DC is. This is what embodies DC. So I was kind of like, I guess you could say a Marvel fan, but instead of being a Marvel fan, I was a Snyder fan. So that's what I used to be like in the beginning. And then as time got went on and DC became more and more toxic toward Zack Snyder, I was just begging for them to just allow his thing to exist at all. Like, if you have to separate it, everything else can go to crap, but just allow him to do his thing, right? So I'm not going to really pretend like now I'm concerned about the continuity of DC. It's like, it never really mattered to me as long, like, I don't have a problem if they come out with all these crappy DC movies, but if there was like one kind of like little bubble that I could go to and enjoy this coherent story from like a really great director, and it felt like it wasn't touched by the studio, then I would really enjoy that. And I wouldn't care. Well, people could say, man, DC sucks. I'd be like, yeah, you're right. But I still stand this, little mini thing over here that is standing on its own. So I don't care. I really don't give a hoot about, whether things make sense or this is the Batman, or if people don't understand. People are stupid,
Yeah.
People won't understand anyway. If it's like the same Batman, it doesn't matter. So I don't care.
Yeah. And this includes myself too. I laugh because I totally get it. Like, if I were to go see a Marvel movie, I'd be totally out of it. I'm the general audience when it comes to the Marvel Studios films. Like, I'm sure they don't go and see every single MCU film. I'm sure they just go and, like, people in their 40s, 50s, 60s are just like, oh, that one looks kind of cool. And then they go check it out and they laugh a little bit and they're done. So that's kind of the fan I would be. So I would fall under that. And it's under that ignorance of like, yeah, I don't really know what's happening. I'm just kind of here checking it out. My kids wanted to go watch it. I don't care. And that's kind of why I just wanted to make that clear. Like, I don't think I'm any better.
No, it's fine. It's just like, I have to clarify because it's like, that doesn't matter. It's very tempting to use it as a way to like make fun of Warner Brothers, but to be just completely and utterly truthful about it, it doesn't actually matter. I never asked for that. I never wanted it, and I don't currently care. I mean, it's nice to have a sledgehammer to beat them over the head with, but yeah, it's like, if it's not coherent, what matters most is that there's something there that I can come back to and that they will stand behind and protect, but they don't care about anything. So that's why, even if it is all the same, we're going to talk about this fairy over here, this gun dude. We're going to talk about him and how he's like, oh, it should be the same voice or whatever. And it's like, well, we'll talk about that here in a minute, because I don't think it matters. Like, I think he's trying to be just like everyone who comes into DC is trying to be like the savior, and it's not, the fans man or whatever. It's like, no.
Right. He's one of us. I keep hearing that on fucking podcasts. Like, I heard it on Word Balloon, and I love John Suntress. I like the podcast, but that's what he and other creatives in the comic industry, all friends of Jeff's, I'm sure, are like, he's one of us. He gets it. It's like, all right, man. Just, I love that people online, and I don't know if this is true, but that people inherently did not like Zach because he reminded them of everything they're not. and Gunn is like more, they relate more to him as far as like the kind of creative and person he is. So it's just really bizarre. But we've been on this anti Warner Brothers Discovery thing, Warner Brothers thing for a while now, but it seems like, and not to the same level of passion, but we're getting more numbers as far as people that are mad at Warner Brothers Discovery. Recently, we had the Henry Cavill fan base finally go, fuck you, James Gunn. And we're like, where have you guys been? And now it's Keanu Reeves fans. As it turns out, there's a very strong rumor out there that Constantine 2, starring Keanu Reeves, it just got greenlit up like a month ago, has now been canceled by James Gunn, Peter Safran. And the idea is that he is going to introduce his own Constantine in his Swamp Thing project that we're going to talk about in a bit. But now Keanu fans are pretty upset and upset at Gunn for canceling this project, which was greenlit before he was hired on.
I don't care about Constantine 1 or 2. So I'm not really like, it doesn't really affect me a lot. This is also a rumor, so I don't really know what to say from that standpoint. I mean, it's not like a plus to pedo. I'm from pedo gun.
Alleged pedo gun. Say it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't even have to add the alleged in there. I'm not worried about them. But it's not like it's a plus to this guy that he didn't cancel it. I mean, even if he didn't cancel it, it's not like, oh, well, man, maybe he's so bad after all. It's like, no, it's like, my opinion is not going to change because he didn't not cancel Constantine, but yeah, I mean, I think that just from the standpoint of like what's going to get people speaking against him, that is probably positive. I mean, it's not negative. The fact that he got hired in the first place already shows that we're too far gone. I mean,
Yeah.
They're going to get rid of him, and then what? They're going to find like the Russo brothers to come in and do the DC thing. It's like, I don't care.
I tweeted this shit where when these movies that we're going to talk about, his projects as part of his slate flop and they fire him, they're going to make it so that he quit on his own and he's going to blame the toxic fans. He's only on contract for another 3 years, I think. So if these movies do flop, if by then one or two come out and they don't do well, and he doesn't get renewed, he's going to blame it on the fan base. And I put that out on Twitter, like, save that fucking tweet, because that's what's going to happen. That seems like the kind of person he is.
I don't know if he would blame on the fan base, because I don't think that there are enough fans who want to deride him. Like if his movies don't make money, I imagine it's going to be a situation where DC is just pumping out all this positive press for his movies, despite the fact they're not making money. The fans that are vocal about it are either split down the middle, like they don't really care that much, or they blame the issues on DC as opposed to being James Gunn particularly. Because, like, for instance, no one's ever really felt strongly about any one individual associated with DC aside from Zack Snyder. When Zack Snyder was here, everything was his fault. Whenever there's another issue with DC, it's just a general DC issue, Yeah. So I don't think that he's gonna blame the fans. I think they're gonna press release it. They're gonna PR it up. He's gonna get his golden parachute, and then people are gonna be like, "Oh, there DC goes again. DC with the DC problems." They're not gonna blame, the warm body in the chair.
Not even James Gunn could save DC, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Zack Snyder ruined DC, but not even James Gunn could save it. Like, classic. It's just, that's how it will always be.
They're written already, the articles. Well, let's get into it here. The slate, the fucking slate that I know last week the news broke right after we directed. Your first time seeing these? Is that? Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I haven't
get your
seen
reaction.
Any of this.
All right, then I'm going to take a little pause after each one because I want to hear what you think of this.
I mean, some of this I'm just like, what?
Oh, most of this. Warner Brothers Discovery and alleged pedo Gunn took to social media to announce their first part of their slate of DC Studios films and shows. It was in a very awkward video, no background music, nothing. It's just him in front of a camera talking and like a little slideshow. And this is how they announced their fucking movies. They truly are broke. So this first one is Superman Legacy. It's a film releasing on July 11th, 2025. It's the only project with a release date. And people are guessing it's because they don't know if they'll have money to make any more after Superman Legacy. So this is the one that he said is going to kick off the continuity of the Gunverse. It's going to explore a much younger Superman, which I don't think surprises anyone here. But there you have it. And he went on Twitter and he asked, red trunks or no red trunks? This is how he's making these decisions. Even though he claims he's not, he quickly followed with, we're not making decisions based on polls online.
I did see that one tweet. I think I saw it as like a little thumbnail because you posted it to the Discord, but I didn't actually see the context of the tweet. Just the fact that he like kind of ran it back. But I mean, this is the funny thing. Okay, so I'm putting the pieces together. Superman Legacy. I mean, obviously what they want to do is they basically want to assure people that this is a Superman who is true. I mean, like they should have just called it like Real Superman or something like that, or like like Superman Classic or
right
or something like that. Like they could have come up with some name, but they obviously want to emphasize that this is like, I mean, it's just so meta. It's like, is the movie actually going to have anything to do with the legacy? I mean, the whole point of Superman is that he's the first of his kind on Earth. There is no legacy. There's nothing to do unless this is like Superman's son, and they're talking about his son legacy or something like that. That's clearly not what this is about, you know? So I think,
I
go
think they're
ahead.
calling it legacy because they're going to give these people, I don't even know what to call them, every bit of Superman that they think they want. They're going to give him the red trunks. He's going to be smiling and
Yeah.
laughing. He's going to be saving cats from trees. He's going to be joking. They're going to be giving him that vanilla Superman that we got from that last one before Man of Steel. Superman Returns. Like, that is basically what fans have been asking for years. That movie flopped, so they hired Zack Snyder to punch up the character, and he did, and fans didn't want it, even though it made a shit ton of money. And the sequels made a shit ton of money, but now they're listening to the criticisms, and this is what we're getting, a very safe, very vanilla Superman.
Yeah, I mean, it's so obvious. Like, it's so cringe. Superman Legacy. Like, oh my God, it's so cringe. It's pure. It's creatively bankrupt, man.
There will be nothing, and you're going to hear the fucking Reeve theme song in there. They're going to work that into it. The same logo. It's going to have the spit curl. And we're just going to
very colorful.
Very colorful. I'm going to be pointing at it like, this is what you guys wanted, right? Go to fucking theaters and watch it. Why are you guys letting this flop? It has to make $1 billion, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we've had enough examples of things like this, where people say, "Man, this is the best movie since The Dark Knight." You know,
every time.
I mean, it's like, I'm sure like with someone on Twitter has like a whole like Google Drive folder of just like collections of all those. So yeah, I'll let them do the work on that.
Well, maybe this next one will change your mind, Millennial Mike. We've got Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. It's another film based on Tom King's comic series. And a very brief summary on this is that she has spent 14 years, I believe is what they're saying, out in space after her planet got destroyed. She's a very violent, broken Supergirl that is coming to terms with the fact that she believes she's one of the last of her kind. So it's a darker story. The comic itself, I read issue 1 back when it released. I think it was last year or the year before.
So kind of like New 52.
Sort of, yeah, but a more it's an edgier version. So this is something
that I mean, let me just be like straight up with you. That excites me. See, I like New 52 Supergirl. I like the fact that, see, this is the thing, okay? I've always kind of been more interested in that particular version of Supergirl than I was in any version of Superman, except for Zack Snyder's Superman. And the reason for that is because she is actually a full-grown adult when she comes to the planet, which means that she actually had experiences on Krypton, right? See, I always hate when people are like, "Oh, like Superman he's an immigrant, blah, blah, blah." It's like, yeah, but he doesn't know anything about Krypton because he was just born. He was born yesterday, you know? So it's like, none of those things get to have the full impact because he didn't actually live as a citizen, an active participant on his planet for any period of time before he was sent to Earth. But Supergirl actually gets to, so you get to have like a Supergirl who speaks Kryptonian, right? You actually get to have Kryptonian language speaking, Kryptonian culture, and she is kind of like in her adolescence, so she has that kind of like adolescent angst, which I liked. And I liked how she had a temper. They kind of did that a little bit in the first season of the CBS Supergirl show, which quickly went downhill. It wasn't that great to begin with. I was kind of a fan of it just because I liked the character. It wasn't a good reason, but so yeah, you know, I don't know. That does excite me. Once again, it's just an idea. Like, I could have made this idea up, but it doesn't mean that they're actually going to do it, or that it will look the same. Like, they could do some reshoots and it could be completely different, you know?
It's just bizarre that Tom King's story is being brought up because all the books that I've read from Tom, maybe Batman and Catwoman, the one that brought back the Phantasm, that's the most cinematic one. And I get that he's writing for comic books. They're not supposed to be films. But if you're talking about adapting these, I don't think they would make good film adaptations. They would have to change them quite a bit. And the fact that they're punching up so much, the fact that Tom King is working on this and that it's based on his universe, I'm just like, what are you pulling from this comic series that would make for a good 3-act film? Like, I just don't understand that because that's not the way Tom King writes. None of his films or his comics, I think, would make for even a good animated movie. So that's why I'm really taken aback at the fact that he chose specifically that miniseries to make a whole film out of.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't read the miniseries, so I can't say, but just based upon what you told me, that excites me. Obviously, if it's edgy, if it's dark, then that is, at least at baseline, more interesting than if it weren't. Because what that means is that it's distinguishing itself from Disney, and that is that for me, like, baseline DC should be dark. I'm not even gonna pretend anymore.
But
Like,
they don't want dark. They don't want edgy. They should hate this.
I mean, this is the thing, right? Because the way that I look at it is this: if it's dark, then I will consider it. But there's dark movies that aren't good from DC, or edgy movies that aren't good, like what the Suicide Squad, right? That was like more edgier, right? It wasn't necessarily like it's not necessarily a Disney movie, but it doesn't mean that I like it. It just means that maybe I would even consider it. At that time, I was not even interested in it. I was just completely tuned out. But yeah, I mean, if something actually looked like for instance, the new that new Batman movie with the
Robert Pattinson.
Pattinson. That is, if they didn't screw over Zach like before they came out with that movie, then I might actually have watched that. You know? So like that kind of thing. Like baseline DC should be more dramatic, it should be more dark, it should be more serious than Marvel, period. You know?
That's the crazy part about it too. And I know I haven't seen this Batman film, and people were like, but at the time, you're a Batman fan. You're supposed to watch it. I'm not supposed to do anything. But you're right. Back when they announced his casting, they were like, we're going to cast Robert Pattinson. It got a shit ton of hate, right? And here on this podcast, I'm like, The Lighthouse just came out. He's done good films. Like, he's not a bad actor. Let's give him a shot. And then everything just took a dump, and then I was like, fuck that movie and fuck all those fucking Warner Brothers films.
I would have watched it if it wasn't at the expense of Ben, at the expense of Snyder, at the expense of the Snyderverse, or whatever we wanted to call it. You know, it had nothing to do with is this the kind of movie that I want to watch? But no, Supergirl sounds like the kind of movie. But there's so many other things that could affect me or completely turn me off of that movie before it even gets thought of. Yeah, there's so much going against it that, like, that's just at best something that would make me consider it, maybe, you know.
Well, another crazy project that it's like, Daniel, you would love this. Yeah, 10 years ago, I'd be in day one. I'd be in theaters to watch this. And that's The Brave and the Bold, another film. This one's based on Grant Morrison's Batman and Damian Wayne run. So Alleged Pedo Gunn said that Damian is his favorite Robin. And again, big surprise, right? 10-year-old Robin, he loves him.
Is he going to be in the little acrobat, you know?
Yeah, he'll probably change his costume to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not good. And so that a movie starring Batman and his son, I would have killed for that shit, man. I would have loved that. For me, I'm not seeing it, but it confuses me. So you're going for a Superman legacy film where it's a younger Superman. You've got a Supergirl somewhere. She's been out of Krypton 14 years. Who knows where she is at this point? If it's based on Tom King's run, she's off on another planet. And then now you've got an old Batman, or if it's truly Morrison's run, is it Dick Grayson as Batman? And he said that it's going to introduce the rest of the Bat family. So the timeline so far for me doesn't add up.
He says that 2025 Superman's supposed to start like a new slate of DC stuff. So that doesn't make any sense, because if that's the case, then everything else would have to be after Superman, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think, honestly, I think that Gunn is just saying a lot of things because that's what people want to hear. And that as long as people go into the theater, it doesn't matter. You know, as long as people watch the movies, it doesn't really matter. And you can say whatever you have to say at that time, you know, to keep, because people are always willing to take the benefit of the doubt when it comes to these superhero movies. I'm not, but most people are. They're waiting to hear something that agrees with what they want to see. And when they hear it, they'll just kind of watch it. Even if it's hate watching, quote unquote, hate watching, they'll still go see it.
Well, when he did announce that Brave and the Bold film, and he said that they're going to introduce the rest of the Bat family, and they're at least start to introduce that Bat family, I was one step closer to that Discord prediction that I kept telling Bobby. I'm like, they're going to do a Nightwing film, and they're going to do a Red Hood film. It's going to happen, Bobby, and you'll be there day one. And he's like, no, I'm not. It's not. They're not going to announce it. They're not going to announce the Nightwing. So when he said that they're going to do the Bat family, I'm like, oh, look, we're almost there. It's going to happen. I'm telling you. So maybe on the next half of that slate of 10 DC films. But like I told them it's not, they're going to focus on Superman first. And sure enough, that's what happened. And they're going to eventually announce a Nightwing and Red Hood film. I'm telling you, we're going to get the gun version of those characters. It's going to happen. And Constantine was the rumored character showing up in this next one, an origin film for Swamp Thing. We didn't get much out of this except that it's going to be loosely based on some of Alan Moore's comics, which are considered some of the best Swamp Thing comics out there. But that's about all we know about this film.
Swamp Thing is a cool character. It would be absolutely interesting in a universe where I trusted this studio. But I mean, it's just like they've always, every new exec that comes in has a slate, and the slate always has something on it that I'm interested in based upon just the idea. Like they say the words, and then I get to put my own images in my own head. Like I'm the one creating my own excitement. Like there's no reason. Like none of this means anything. So it's like, yeah, I mean, if I made a Swamp Thing movie, then yeah, it'd be pretty cool, but I'm not making it.
Yeah, it's a thing that I'm like, I don't care. It would have been maybe under a Guillermo del Toro where they wanted the Justice League Dark. He was going to do in that film, and it was going to have Swamp Thing and Constantine and Zatanna and all these other cool characters, Deadman, and maybe he'll introduce those in this Swamp Thing film. But it's another weird thing of like, that's an odd choice though, because Swamp Thing is again not a super popular character. So to me, I don't know, if my 4-year contract were on the line, I might have held off on a Swamp Thing movie, or at least had him as a supporting character somewhere else.
I mean, hey, listen, if this was a different time or a different director, I would be like, or if I had more like faith, I'd be like, oh, look at, he's taking risk. I would say that.
Right.
That's what I would say. I mean, I could just change. I could be like negative or positive about anything, but it's like, yeah, I mean, maybe he is taking a risk, but it's really about whether it'll pay off. I don't think it'll pay off.
No.
I mean, so far, Superman Legacy, like, okay, that's kind of cringe. It says Superman in the title. Okay. Legacy, cringe, right? Superman, Woman of Tomorrow. Okay. This is the thing, right? It's based on a comic. It's called Woman of Tomorrow. And if the comic is good, it's good. However, that title is loaded. Like that's going to be interesting hearing the PR coming around and all the talk and internet stuff that kind of comes out closer to the release of that. Whoever gets cast as Supergirl, that's going to be a whole interesting thing. Especially for people who don't know that it's based on a specific comic of that title, right?
Mm-hmm.
Brave and the Bold, everyone knows the cartoon, right? Very few people, I think, actually know about or care about the comic. I mean, they do it, but the cartoon was really popular. So I think most people are going to think about that. I think that like those two things, Brave and the Bold, Supergirl, kind of get people excited. Those are like, I don't know, things that I think would be positive to announce. Swamp Thing is a positive thing. So like just on the face of it, if we're just acting like we were born yesterday and we're just reading this list, it's not really that bad.
The one that I think maybe would make money is the Brave and the Bold if they market the shit out of the fact that Batman's in it, because that's the only thing that seems to make money for them these days.
That's
true. I'm not complaining about the comic line being mostly Batman. I like Batman, but a lot of people are saying like, look how much Batman they're publishing on the comic front, because that's what sells today. People like Batman, and that's all they can print and sell right now. They can't sell a Justice League Dark series to save their lives. They'd rather give Nightwing or Batman or another Bat character their own title, or even Batman himself.
Now, the Brave and the Bold has always included Superman as well. It wasn't a Batman exclusive comic, right? Wasn't it? Correct. Batman and Superman?
Yeah, it's had other characters even outside of them too.
Right, and because of that, it's always been a more brighter, because it's Bat Family.
Mm-hmm.
So it's brighter, and then it's got Superman as well and other characters. So it's more of a brighter kind of movie. So, I mean, while that is positive from the standpoint of like it has Batman in it, just that alone, like I'm not interested. Like I'm tired of the Batman as he is. Like now I get to have like a bright kind of like like I don't know, like a more Saturday morning cartoon style Batman. Like I'm not sure I want that.
Well, and that's the only one I think has the potential to make a decent amount of money. The rest of these, I think they're all big risks. I think giving Supergirl her own movie is a big risk. Superman these days too, because they're going to give us a very vanilla Superman. That's going to be a huge risk. Swamp Thing, again, a big risk. I think I think it's a bad bet, to be honest with you. And this last one, the last film in this first part of the slate that he's calling Gods and Creatures or Gods and Monsters is the Authority, which has never been an amazing selling comic. It's had its fan base, it's had its sales, but never to the level of something that would deserve its own film, let alone its own TV show or even animated movie. So this is one of those titles that people are saying, well, look at what he did with Guardians of the Galaxy. Maybe he can do that again with the Authority. Ignore the fact that he didn't do it with the Suicide Squad. That was a flop.
Yeah.
Just ignore
also,
that.
He didn't do it.
And that's the other thing. Yeah.
He works for a company called Disney, but he works for a studio called Marvel Studios. And this thing that he created was inside of Marvel Studios.
And apparently he didn't write it.
Yeah. So he had a baked in franchise. He didn't do jack. So that's just one of the classic, James Gunn apologizing talk tracks that we hear constantly, and it means even less in the DC universe.
Yeah, and I do want to follow up that comment real quick of that he has a writing credit on Guardians of the Galaxy, but it turns out that a lot of that heavy lifting was done by another writer, and she did not come back for Guardians 2 from what I think Scott was telling me, and that's why Guardians 2 is significantly worse than the first one, because that one was primarily written by him. So yeah. The Authority, again, there's most people don't know who they are. Like even I had some idea of who the Authority was when I started really diving into Detective Comics, and especially once I started working at the comic shop, then I'm like, okay, I'm learning these characters. But everyone else, I mean, what's the fucking draw? Why the Authority? And I think it is just that idea of, look, nobody knows them, so the only way to go is up. It can only be a success. It's a terrible move, the Authority. Why?
The way that I look at this slate, just from I'm just looking at this as text on a, black on white, just text on a blank slate. They have a Superman on there and they have Supergirl on there, right? So it's not like they just did Supergirl. So I can't I can't complain from the standpoint of, oh, they're trying to replace him. That's clearly not the case here. And I actually do like Supergirl, and it sounds like it's going to be dark, edgy, and kind of similar to the versions of Supergirl that I like. So I was like, okay, well, just from that standpoint, it's cool. Brave and the Bold, I don't care about. I don't want it, but it does have Batman, Superman, and other DC characters in there. So that kind of gives you a lot of the big names in there, right? Swamp Thing is something that I think a lot of fans kind of want to see it, even though it's not terribly popular, but there's a lot of talk. There's enough there. So I feel like the Authority is just kind of an odd one out. It's I think it's actually, if I were being overly, kind to Pedo Gun, the risk of the slate. So I don't know. I don't feel from the standpoint of risk reward or whatever that it's unbalanced. That's not my concern at all. I have other concerns.
And my main thing is, if this were, before we get into the TV stuff that ties into all of this too, is if this were a DC publishing line, I could already tell you that the Authority would be canceled before issue 12. Swamp Thing would maybe make it to issue 12. Batman would do fine. Superman would do okay, and sales would continue to dwindle onto year 2, year 3 before I'd be like, they should do a new number 1 to get sales back up. And Supergirl has not done historically great either on sales. Even the New 52 was a solid line, but that was one of those titles, Supergirl, where it went on for a while, but it wasn't a top seller either. So I don't see, I'm confused, and I don't see, I'm looking at this from a retailer standpoint, I guess, or from titles that sold, characters that do move comics, and this is not a great lineup.
I see.
Before we go into the TV side of what he's announced along with Safran, did you have any, we can do the whole line at the end once we see all of them, I guess. Paradise Lost is a TV project. It's a Wonder Woman Themyscira spinoff. So far, Gunn has said that they have not let go of Gal Gadot, so she may be involved in this in some form. It sounds like this is that reworked Themyscira movie that they canceled, and they've instead reworked it into a TV show.
Yeah, I don't like TV. I don't like TV. I mean, especially like a lot of these kind of shows that they're making with like the superheroes and whatnot, because they're always they're bloated. Like the budgets are so bloated, and the actual final product is just so underwhelming. It's just the production values are so low. So I really don't like the idea that Superman and Batman get to have a movie, but then Wonder Woman gets, has to have a TV show, especially coming off of Wonder Woman in BVS, which was the most glorious version of Wonder Woman that I've ever seen. It was amazing. So just to imagine like what kind of garbage they're going to put on TV for people to watch on their phones. I couldn't care less about it.
Another oddball character.
Or I could care less about it.
Is Booster. Couldn't. Yeah, you got it. You got it right the first time. Booster Gold is going to get his own TV show. Yeah, it's another slate of like a slot of like I could think of other characters that you could put in. Swamp Thing would have made a better TV show than the Booster Gold one. I know that he had one and it was fumbled around and they didn't renew it, but over Booster Gold for sure. It's one of those things that I don't know. I don't get it. I don't understand it. And I prefer they do a TV show of Booster Gold over a movie because I think it would definitely flop as a film. But I guess they want to do Booster Gold.
So this is the part where when I was actually earlier when I was saying like what, I was actually looking at all the TV shows. Mostly. Like the movies I was kind of like whatever, But then I saw I saw The Authority. I was like, what? But then I also saw like Paradise Lost TV, Wonder Woman. It's like, no, it's like, and Booster Gold is one of those characters where I think he would actually be a fan favorite as a TV show, even if people don't know really much about him, because I mean, like for the people who do actually watch him, I think they will like him because he has some dramatic storylines, but he's also a very funny character, and it's just kind of a very strange story. And I think that under Gunn's supervision, he's going to do what a lot of true DC fans and Marvel fans want superheroes to do. So, I think that there'll be a lot of positive talk about the show. Whether it'll actually pull in the numbers is a whole different thing.
Well, another weird one here is, and even I hadn't heard of this team. It's the Creature Commandos, and that'll be an animated TV series. His brother will be voicing Weasel in this, who I guess was in The Suicide Squad. And it's made up of characters like Frankenstein, who I have heard of. All right, so we're getting there. I think Dr. Phosphorus is one of them, too. It's like, all right, I've heard of him. But overall, it's like, why the Creature Commandos? And I guess that it's animated. Maybe it's cheaper that way. I don't know. Like, at least this isn't a fucking movie. I expected this to be a film, too.
Yeah, as if all these, D tier characters weren't already cheap, like make it animated with that really crappy, looking new DC style animation that they did. Like
so bad.
That's just like everything looks exactly the same. There's like not even a drop of artistic, intent within the whole thing. Yeah.
It all looks like I just watched that Green Lantern Jon Stewart film on HBO Max, the animated one. It has Sinestro on the cover. I keep passing it at Target when I go with Scott, and I'm like, oh shit, Sinestro's in that movie? He's more like a Hal Jordan villain. Maybe I'll check that out if it hit HBO Max, and it finally did. And it's got that same Archer. I don't know if you've seen it. It looks like Archer, right? Where it's just this weird base animation. It's not even animated. It feels like it's computer motion or something.
Yeah, like they're all just rigged, and they have. Yeah, I mean Archer. I think the thing about Archer is that it's made that way because it increases the humor. It's like with Archer, their arms and they move very robotically. I think that's kind of actually what makes it kind of absurd and funny. But all the new stuff is not as robotic, but it still feels kind of just like all the characters are drawn on a computer and they're all attached to a rig that they didn't have a lot of frames to spare. So the motion isn't really smooth. It's just doing what it's got to do. Their mouths are always kind of moving up and down, and maybe they might articulate some things, but it's just computer AI generated trash.
It's really bizarre. Like when Sinestro was flying behind Jon Stewart, it was literally like a fucking Photoshop effect or like a PowerPoint presentation where you'd have the thing slide into off the screen and onto it. That's exactly what it looked like. It was that smooth, and it's like you're not even going to give him a little bit of movement as he fucking flies. You're just going to have him slide up and down. Like fuck this.
Yeah, that's vomit inducing, man.
Well, we'll apparently get some of that with Preacher Commandos and people fucking pretending like this is. I'd rather say this than Justice League versus Darkseid.
As long as it's accurate, as long as it.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, it's got to be. Yeah. Well, we know James Gunn's good at that, right? He's definitely gotten all the fucking characters accurate. That's what baffles me. It's like you want accuracy, then it's not going to be from Gunn. He's going to make them look at fucking Peacemaker. Making piss jokes, fart jokes, and all that. Yeah, no, that's like Peacemaker, right? Or any of the Suicide Squad, or any of the Guardians of the Galaxy. It's insane. But no, he gets it. He gets it. He's one of you guys, apparently. This next one is Waller, starring Viola Davis, also a TV show. And this is, speaking of Peacemaker, he's apparently supposed to show up in this show. And this is like the in-between before he does Peacemaker Season 2.
I'm sorry that Viola has come to this. I mean,
wasted talent, man.
Well, yeah, she's been wasting her talent a lot recently, but yeah, it's too bad. It's too bad.
It's like the saddest of them. This is probably, I don't know who they're casting.
She was so good as she was in the first one. She was so good.
I first saw her in Doubt, and that's with Philip Seymour Hoffman and Meryl Streep and Viola Davis. That was the first time I saw her, and when they cast her as as Waller in Suicide Squad and David Ayers, I was like, holy shit, yes, she's amazing. She was incredible in Doubt. What an incredible actor. Yeah. And now, I don't know what the fuck she's...
The Help, I really enjoyed her in The Help. I also enjoyed her a lot in Fences with Denzel Washington.
Yeah, I forget, she was also in something else recently, but it's just...
The Woman King.
Yeah, that's right. That just came out on Blu-ray. But then you also see her in something like... It's just crazy. It's a paycheck, good for her. It's steady work and all that.
Well, she did How to Get Away with Murder, so she's not like unfamiliar with TV. It's not like she hasn't had success both on TV and on the film. But this is not How to Get Away with Murder.
No. Yeah, no, she's a very talented woman, and I think she's incredible. So that's the fact that she's on this it just makes me incredibly sad, and that she was on the Suicide Squad, and I'm like. That sucks, man. I heard they made her into a giant joke in that too, so she's not going to be handled well. This last TV project is called Lanterns, and it follows Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart. He called it like a buddy cop TV show, and that a lot of the DC universe will expand from this Lanterns show, which is another one that I think is the scrapped Lantern or forever worked on Lantern show that is now finally releasing. Except Gunn and Safran got their hands on it, and they're making it fit into that universe.
Yeah, probably. I didn't care about that last one. When they first announced it, Green Lantern shouldn't be on TV. They could throw a Rings of Power budget at it, and it'll just look like Rings of Power, which is garbage, So I really have no hope that you need to have just the expectation and the high standards that come with a movie.
Yeah.
In order for something to look good, because you can put a movie budget into a TV show, but the standards are so much lower. So they just put the money other places,
And that's the problem with this is the Green Lantern. I've read, I know how much we don't like Jeff Johns, but I've read his full run from the New 52. And before that, it all tied in together. It was one continuity. And just the spectacle of the Green Lantern stories. You've got all these aliens and different colored lanterns and the Guardians of the Universe, like all of that stuff is stuff that would be great on the big screen. And what kind of budget would you need to have to make a Green Lantern show work on HBO Max or whatever they're putting this on? It would have to be humongous, or they're cutting down on the number of aliens and they're just having Earth adventures and maybe they're inside a spaceship for a while or a ton of green screen.
Recycled CW.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to know what any of these things are going to look like, just look at like one of the higher budget CW crossovers that looks like that's what you're going to expect, but maybe just a little bit more polished with a little bit better actors, maybe. And that's it.
It just sucks, man. I would have loved to seen like the Sinestro Corps War as a full
Oh my
film,
goodness.
which is what they were leading into
Darkest
back.
Night.
Blackest Night, or
Wow,
yeah, I mean
Blackest Night,
that
yeah.
would have been a big one too.
Well,
And
also Jeff. That's Jeff Johns too. Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, all
I
of
always
that
say
is.
I always say Darkest Night. I still do it to this day, man. It's like Brightest Day, Blackest Night. Like, come on,
And then
man.
there's Darkest Night.
I get
Darker
it.
than Blackest.
Bright Day, Black Night. Like BB. I get it. You know, the double alliterative.
Yeah, and
It's poetic.
it's another that last one is one project that, again, if all of this hadn't gone down, I'd be like, you know what, let me give that a shot. I like Hal Jordan, I like Jon Stewart, and I like the Green Lantern Corps. But but I can't watch it. I can't give it a shot even. Like, I have no interest in it because of who's involved. I know it won't be solid, and I know people are like, give it a shot first, just check it out. It's like, if I already know what he's gonna give us, it's that meme of like, just try it, and it's like a bowl filled with shit. It's like, but I know it's shit. Like, I don't need to know what it tastes like.
Yeah. Also, there's nothing to try. You know, people want you to make up your mind or be receptive to it before anything exists. I'm definitely not going to be receptive to it before it exists, and I'm going to be extremely realistic once I see a trailer. So
yeah, well, there were some questions about, now that the Flash movie is coming out, Blue Beetle, and all these Aquaman 2 that don't fit into this slate. So what's the point of watching them, right? And that's been a good point that I'm like, that's right. What is the point of watching them? Don't go see them. Gunn confirmed that the Flash film is going to reset the DC universe. He did, however, confirm that some characters, like Amanda Waller and Wonder Woman, will not be reset, and that Blue Beetle and Aquaman 2, they do release after The Flash, but they do not take place in Gunn's universe. So he did not work either of those characters or people into his universe. Momoa is probably going to be Lobo, which is why he was so excited to work with Gunn and thanked them on his Instagram. And the Flash will also not take place in Gunn's universe, but there's still question as to whether or not Ezra will have any role in this new universe. I don't think he will. So now that you see the full slate of movies and TV, and before we go into a couple of Brocat thoughts, what are your overall thoughts on this full slate of movies and TV that are all going to tie into one another? Same continuity.
lots of CW level television that I've never cared about, and always degrades after season one, after the first episode, nevertheless, first pilot, and then even more after season one, if it even continues and doesn't get canceled. So yeah, and then the TV show or the movies, it's like none of them are confirmed except for Superman Legacy, which is cringe, and Supergirl will probably get reshot multiple times. So and then and brightened up, for the sake of the Marvel
Sure.
shills that infiltrated DC a million years ago.
Yeah, or they pretended to care and they'd go and see these films, but they don't care. They're not DC fans. They just want to see this shit fail. And it's going to flop. That's what this whole slate is going to be. And then they can, again, just hurry up and buy this Comcast. I have no hope that Comcast is going to do anything good either, but it's just like, I don't give a shit. Buy it, Comcast. It's going to be cheaper for you if you wait until these flop.
Honestly, the more chaotic the person that owns DC is, the better chance that we have, because we need someone who literally is just mentally insane to accidentally make something good. Because the problem is that everyone has like this vision, which is always just like, man, we need to get ourselves together like Disney does. Every person that comes in, like so that's why I was like, oh, Disney's really got something good going on. We're gonna do what they're doing, and that's how it is every single time. And no one has ever come out and said, DC is valuable, and there's something that's unique and powerful about DC that Disney doesn't have with Marvel, right? And we're acknowledging that there is a rivalry there, and that the only way to win is to separate ourselves. If no one's ever said that, every time someone new comes in, the first thing that they do is they thank, Feige for setting the stage for the for the superhero movies,
right?
Yeah,
I think
it's like
the closest we've gotten was Todd Phillips, who said almost that thing of like, Disney could never make this Joker film, but we can, and he turned down the job.
Yeah, exactly. So because of that, we're just getting all these TV shows like Disney has with their Disney Plus stuff, which are supposed to tie in with the movies, like both of the companies have been doing with the CW, which is also terrible. All low budget, everything's low budget. more Batman and a Superman that's gonna be just on its knees begging to the fans that, in its little undies, that it's worth, their time.
It looks absolutely terrible, and I'm just shocked at how bad the slate is, honestly. I'm like, okay, this is gonna be rough. And then when I saw some of these announcements, like The Authority, Paradise Lost, Creature Commandos, Supergirl, I'm like, holy shit! Like,
Yeah.
he's trying to really sink this shit. It's insane. But I did ask a couple of you on Twitter what you thought, and this first one that I'm including comes from @Sukuna_persist, who said, quote, "Like I said, Warner Brothers Discovery is broke equals cheap DC content. They better #sell Zack Snyder's Justice League to Netflix," end quote. So that's what you were saying. It's going to be low budget. They don't have the money to make these look good.
It's not the money. They don't have the.
They're billions in debt, man.
But it's not even that. It's like they don't have the money or the expectation, right? Because they've been doing so poorly, the expectation is even lower, And if they were doing well, eventually the expectation, I mean, I think in general, the expectation with superhero movies, as far as, and TV shows on how they look, most superhero TV shows and movies have always looked worse than their counterparts. Their fantasy, sci-fi counterparts. Alita Battle Angel looks just a trillion times better than any superhero movie, period.
Mm-hmm.
Because it has to prove itself. It has to come out on its own merits and be like, hey, we're dumping all this movie and every cent has to make this look like something that's worth seeing in theaters.
Yep.
But people want to go to see superhero movies in theaters just because it exists. There's no reason for them to put the money into making it look as good as possible. And it's even more so with TV because people don't even have to get out of their fat butts out of the couch to go to the theater. So like they don't really care as long as it just waste their time at home, or they can leave it on in the background or whatever. So they're not even gonna watch half of it. So yeah, there's just no reason to make it look good. And then on top of that, even if there was a reason, they don't have the money. So
this next one comes from @TheSnyderverse2, who said, quote, "This new slate feels like Warner Brothers has been bought out by Cartoon Network and the new target audience is 11-year-olds, end quote. Well, definitely that mentality. I agree. If
that's gone.
And that's gone. They're aiming at MCU fans, like you were saying, who are not going to come out for these. And their mentality is of MCU films, kids films. It's like, I didn't put it on here, but Seth Rogen, he was like, talking about how the Avengers, he was watching it and he's like, oh, this isn't for me. This is for kids.
Yeah.
That's what these movies are for. And he's right.
Well, yeah, I like the way he said it. He was basically like, sometimes I have to remember that I forget that I'm a single, adult man who doesn't even really like these movies. I because it's not made for me. It's like, I don't have a family. I don't have kids, but yeah, it's funny.
Pretty insane. If you are burning to give us your thoughts on this slate, you can also be heard on the show. Just head on over to speakpipe.com/thereasonsimBroke. And we did have some thoughts on this new universe. We had some video game thoughts as well. But first, Alleged Pedal Gun summed up he has his own summary thoughts on this 10 years of DC content.
I'm dying to know.
In an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, he said, quote, ready? "As everyone here probably knows, the history of DC is pretty messed up. There is the Arrowverse. There is the DCEU, which then split, became the Joss Whedon Justice League at one point, became the Snyderverse at the other point. There was Superman and Lois. There's the Reeves-verse. There's all these different things. Even us, we came in and did Suicide Squad, and that became Peacemaker. And all of a sudden, Batmite is a real guy that's never been set up. No one was minding the mint. They were just giving away IP like they were party favors to any creator that smiled at them," end quote. So it just sums up his idea of he wants it all to connect. I didn't like that he brought up the Snyderverse at all, and I don't think that was smart of him to do because everyone immediately jumped on it. It just seemed like the way he quoted it, that it was at any point the Snyderverse again after Zack was gone, and it wasn't.
Yeah. The one thing that they'll never talk about is the actual vision. Like, what is DC? Like, what does it mean? Like, what's the mythos? What's the thematic material that underlies DC characters, right? And that's the one thing that they don't ever talk about, because people want things to connect, but connection is so cheap. It's the cheapest thing. Like, the only thing that connection that needs to be there is just someone showing up in another film, which doesn't even have to, they don't even have to actually be there on set to shoot. They can just add them in for CG, So yeah, it's frustrating. He's basically saying what we all know, but it's just so cheap, because it's like, yeah, we've known this for so long. You're not smart. You're not one of us. You're not like the one person who's woke and like, oh, we know what's going on. Like, no, you're just late to the party.
And one of the things that was also confirmed is that even the video games are going to tie into the film. So he said something that the characters that show up in the big screen and on TV are going to be voiced by the same people that are on the big screen or on the little screen. And that the same goes with the games. They're going to have the same actor that plays them in the other two to be in the games as well. And that it's all going to be in the same continuity. Well, Marvel's Midnight Suns game creative director, Jake Solomon, he recently criticized Gunn and Safran's plans to tie in that gaming department into their TV and movie continuities. He said, quote, "This would have been a nightmare for us on Midnight Suns. I understand the desire, I think, but movies and games are so different. And the pressure that this puts on amazing voice actors in the game space, different universes, and that's how they will stay," end quotes. I mean, that just requires a shit ton of planning. I mean, good luck pulling that shit off.
Yeah, he won't be able to. And not to mention, this is the thing, right? The more that they spread their crap over the place, the more crap there is. It's like, sometimes, like, at the very end of the day, I will play a Marvel video game, because that's the one thing that I know that Disney hasn't touched, for the most part. Like,
sure,
it actually feels like, hey, this is not touched by the corporate overlords. Like, this is actually something different. And Gunn is even considering spreading his stuff all over into the game. Like, I actually, at the end of the day, might just hate Warner Bros. Guts, but still play and enjoy a DC game. But now they're taking away the possibility of even that. So it's like, yeah, forget it.
It's the biggest fucking gamble, because now you fucked all three divisions. If this whole thing is a flop, you've completely fucked your TV and gaming division. Gunn confirmed on Twitter that, because people are like, games take like 6 years to develop. How are you going to already have games out that are going to tie into this? And he actually responded, and he's like, actually, it takes like 4 years to develop a video game, and we've already planned for that well ahead of time, and some games after 4 years. So he supposedly already has games lined up that are going to tie into all of this. But it just sucks that now creatively, any game directors, voice actors, or writers, they're fucking gone. They're just tied into, make sure you tell this story right here and don't deviate too much, and don't use these characters because we're going to use them in the future, or we might use them in the future.
For movies that no one wants to watch, no one likes anyway.
Yep. And that's the big gamble, that they're going for broke here. And former Rocksteady and Batman Arkham developer Del Walker also criticized alleged pedo Gunn for the same gaming and film tie-ins. He said, quote, "James Gunn just stated that DC want the film, games, and animation characters to be consistent and played by the same actors. I'll never work on a DC title ever again if that's upheld. You've lost your mind if you think Hollywood can outdo Tara Strong's Harley or any voice actor. These writers and voice actors do 100 versions of everything. They are in the booth doing 600 lines of dialogue just to end up with 20 of the best in the game. You think you're going to get Robert Pattinson to outwork a voice actor? And for a budget that makes sense? Mm-hmm. Good luck," end quote.
We don't even know what any of the actors that they're going to hire for these movies, aside from just a handful of them. A lot of them are probably going to be cheap because they can't afford the good actors. So it's like they're going to have poor actors doing the movies, and then they're not even good voice actors because they're not voice actors at all.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you probably have more experience with that on something like on an anime, or even when we saw, and it worked out with Christian Bale, but when they try to put like celebrities on anime films or anime projects, and it's like it's never quite the same as if you were to have an actual voice actor. I wouldn't pick Tara Strong. I don't like her Harley Quinn, but like Arlene Sorkin. Like I liked Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn, but I would prefer to hear Arlene over suddenly having Margot voice her all over the place.
I mean, I do get James Gunn, because I do think that audiences want familiarity. It's like comforting to them, like a warm blanket, you know?
Yeah.
So I do think that kind of thing is actually what people want to hear. Not me, not you, not, our group of people, but there's there's a big majority of people out there that want to hear like, oh yeah, like we're getting continuity. Like finally DC's getting it together. They don't care about quality. They just care about familiarity, which is quality to them.
And I still don't think it's going to get that far, as he was saying, like, good luck. Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. It's such a fucking pipe dream, and I don't think he's going to pull it off. Even the big bad Disney hasn't been able to fucking pull it off to successfully even get into the gaming space. So he's betting on his vision being successful, the games being good, and the TV shows being good, and all of it just being a success. Also, and because it's all tied in, then it all works out. But it's not all going to be a success.
This is something interesting too. So if he actually said, it can take as little as 4 years to make a game, and then he already has games lined up, is what he's saying is that he's been working with DC the past 4 years to make games that are going to tie into movies that he's creating now? Is that what he's saying? Because if that's the case, that could explain a lot what's going on. That means that Feige and Gunn have been associating with the DC execs for the past 4 years, at least 4 to 6 years.
Well, if that were the case, then we'd be getting a game out in the next year or two, which we're not getting. But I think that answer will become more clear based on when that first tie-in video game, if it ever releases, actually comes out. And when it does, we will cover it here. Good or bad, I don't know. Maybe I'll love it. Who knows? Maybe I'll have a sudden change of heart. Very doubtful. But let's head into this week's Patreon comment. This one comes from Adrian, who said, quote, and this was all referencing last week's episode, "I did not know there was a lawsuit regarding that magic-type Pokemon. Thanks for the recommendation for the Damian Wayne Batman comics, Daniel. I already have Batman 666. My favorite line from him is, 'The apocalypse is off because I say so.'"
Batman just said, "We're canceling the apocalypse." Good. That's right. I just had to.
Every time there is a Snyderverse trending event, I tend to use a Damian Wayne Batman quote. I'll have to look up Deceased. It's just ever since the Snyder Cut movement started and I learned just how much of a snake Jeff Johns is, it's hard to bring myself to buy any DC comic. Looking forward to your next week's show. At the time I posted this comment, Pedal Gun already released his slate, end quote. Very much appreciated, Adrian. And I do think it's hilarious that right before the slate announcement, we were talking about Damian Wayne, and then he gets included in a fucking movie. But I very much appreciated Adrian, and yes, we're all very familiar with the snake that is Jeff, and it's pretty terrible. But I'm curious, Adrian, if Damian Wayne is also your favorite Robin. I think I know your answer already, but are you at all interested in this Brave and the Bold film? Let us know. But let's head on into the final portion of today's episode. It is the Brokept Block. What's been making us broke? What we've been watching, reading since you last heard us. So Millennial Mike, please kick it off.
I've been as I mentioned before with the streaming services, I've been kind of in not brokept, save that mode.
Save that.
Let me see here. I actually didn't prepare anything really. I mean, I haven't really been playing any games or whatnot. Mostly it's been going broke with my gym membership.
Nice.
I didn't say I was going to the gym. I just said it's just making me broke.
Sure. That's true.
But I would say that's pretty much it right now.
Something you should try, and this is something I discovered, is like because I'm like, all right, Planet Fitness is the cheapest, right? But they're packed, right? With the New Year, New Me's people.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people overlook this, but your locally like county owned rec centers, because they're cheaper than, at least they're as cheap or cheaper than Planet Fitness, and they're dead. Like people are always in the basketball courts. They're very rarely they're in the weight center or the treadmills or any of that. So
I'm doing Ultimate That's where I'm currently
Is that like a
going.
chain?
It is a chain. I mean, it's a smaller. I believe it's a smaller chain, and it's not like your Gold's Gym or your
Hmm.
Planet Fitness or your like there's one called like Life Fitness or something like that. It's not like any of those. So it's. I mean, it does get packed. I mean, the one I go to is the only one that's kind of like in its area. So it does get pretty busy on certain times, but you can, of course, kind of maneuver things. Like if you go after work, it's usually not nearly as busy.
Yeah.
I find like if you go later, you know.
Yeah, that's how I've been maneuvering because I have a Planet Fitness account or membership, but I checked out my local recreation center and they have a gym in there as well. And I checked it out. I'm like, there's no one fucking in here. So I ended up getting a membership there. And that's where I go during the week where it's normally very packed up because I kept going to Planet Fitness. I'm like, I can't fucking do my workouts. I can't get on the machines I need to because everyone's sitting on them and on their phone or, doing whatever. So it's like, this sucks. And I would even go later. I would try to go right before they close, an hour and a half before they closed, and it would still be fucking packed with people much younger than I that can stay up late and just go to the gym. And then it's not a 24-hour thing. And even if it were, I need to get up early to go to work. So now I have this solution. On the weekends, I do go to Planet Fitness, but during the week, I've got the recreation center, and it is like today I had it all to myself. There was no one in there. I finished my whole routine in less than an hour. It was amazing.
Yeah. I do want to invest in a home gym, though. That's actually something that I've been planning on, at least just starting to build it. I currently have a treadmill, which is good. I have a rowing machine, which sounds good, but the rowing machine that I have is terrible. Like whenever you pull back on it, it like lifts up. It's like, come on, the whole point is that it doesn't move,
True.
So it's just it's not really great. And even if you turn the tension up all the way, it doesn't really feel like you're getting full smooth tension across the entire pull, right? It feels kind of like it's like tension and then less tension and then tension at the end, So it just doesn't really feel like you're getting a really even workout. And it was kind of cheap. I mean, it wasn't terribly cheap. It wasn't the worst one you could have gotten. So I'm a little bit disappointed in that, but it's more of a cardio thing anyway. I get my cardio on the treadmill, which works, and I prefer the treadmill anyway. So just maybe some of those foam squares, get some of those, like an exercise ball, some weights, a kettlebell or something like that, some dumbbells. That'll be nice when I'm not able to go to the gym. I can maybe get up earlier in the morning and work out So yeah,
dumbbells are always solid because I found that, I started back when I was like, oh, well, I can't make it to the gym today. Let me work out from home. And even on YouTube, you can look up dumbbell exercises, like upper body 30-minute dumbbell exercises, and you can do a lot with those things. And
yeah,
it's pretty incredible. So if that's like I'm not looking to get a whole setup at home or anything, but I'm like, with these weights, I can just progressively buy heavier ones as I progress, and I can do a lot with them.
Or those stretchy things, the bands.
Yes.
Those work great. You can get a lot of kinds of workouts you can't really get using other kind of weighted exercises. It's great.
Did you end up checking out the SNL Mario Kart sketch? The HBO over?
I literally was looking at that like right before we started because I got off work and I grabbed something to eat and then I sat down and I saw it and I was thinking about pressing it, but I ended up pressing something else instead. But it just the thumbnail looked really funny.
I thought that it was going to be like, all right, it's like a very I don't know. I thought it was going to be a lot cheaper looking than it ended up being because they actually got Pedro Pascal to go in and dress up as Mario and do the whole bit. And to the point where, like, yeah, they criticized it at the end where they're like, critics are saying this ain't it, bro, and stuff like that. They're doing that. But it's like an adult version of Mario Kart where it's like a post-apocalyptic thing. They're doing it just like The Last of Us. And I'm like, I would fucking watch this. Like, this is like the production is actually pretty high on this.
Yeah.
They have effects, of him driving and shit.
Did you talk about the Last of Us show in the last episode?
Not on the last episode, but I have talked about it.
Okay, gotcha. I've been watching. I have been watching that. So it's okay. I watched the first 2-3 episodes, I believe. The last one was about those two guys living together in that mansion or whatever after the apocalypse breaks out. So the production quality is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
I would say they don't focus as much attention on the elements that need the high production quality. So the way that they create the show, it's very practical, and I do like that. I think that obviously there will probably be the episodes where you're in the weeds, so to speak, more, and there's like more zombies and more, like especially the other zombies down the road, like the bloaters and things like that, where you're probably gonna have to. I don't know. It just depends kind of how they do it. But yeah, I would say like the first episode was it was kind of safe. I felt like it was like exactly like the show,
The
and
game.
it was, or the game. I'm sorry. Yeah, the show was like the show. The game's like the show to the extent that it felt like there was no creative flourishes at all. And I felt like, okay, well, the game did everything this did better. And then the second episode was pretty strong. It was a little bit different. So I'm like, okay, this is something I haven't seen. And then the third episode was like, what is this show even about? You know? I was like, what is this even about? You know? But I have been watching it from week to week. The latest episode that came out this past Sunday, I haven't watched that one yet. But
Okay.
but yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, I think it's halfway through its season right now, and it makes sense that we haven't seen a lot of clickers. Like we saw a bunch in episode 2, but it sounds like it's got that same thing that like Resident Evil had on Netflix or some of these other shows that require a lot of action or a higher budget on some of the monsters. Where towards the end of the season, that's where they then blow their cash on their production. So I think that's what that's leading to. That's where we'll get the bloaters and some of the other clickers. And I haven't played the first game. I haven't played any of the Last of Us games, but just based on episode 4, I don't think that it's halfway through the game already, because a lot of people speculate that season 2 is going to be part 2 of the video game. But I feel like it's going to be season 1 is just going to be a little part of the video game.
They're definitely stretching out the first game as far as it can go, which I actually think it's smart, because I think that they need to establish some trust in their ability to make a show based on the first game before they delve into the second game, which was highly controversial.
Yeah.
So, because they're not going to be able to avoid controversy with doing an adaptation of the second game, because if they do it exactly like it was in the
Right.
game, there people who didn't like it aren't going to like it. If they change it, they're going to be like, oh, that they walked it back. Like it's going to be bad too.
Yeah, that's something that I think Sam and I were discussing last week or the week before with another host of, if they change it too much, then people whine like they did with Halo. And then if they don't change it enough, then people whine that it's like, well, I could have just played the video game. Why am I watching this? So it's a fine balance, I think. And I don't have the correct answer on that. But I know one of the writers that worked on the game is working on this show as well. And I'm actually listening to the Last of Us companion podcast. And I do get a lot of insight because I haven't played the games, where they go, yeah, this character wasn't in the game and we felt we needed this. Or this is different than the clickers in the game because of this reason. So they've changed some things already to better suit a show, and which I think is a good thing. But I haven't played the games.
Yeah, it's pretty solid. I mean, the acting is pretty good, and nothing feels like it jumps out like, that was kind of cheap, or that was kind of like, I could tell they did that here because they couldn't afford to do this, or they were trying to like get around some kind of limitation or something like that. It feels like everything that they did, they chose to do it, so I like that.
Yeah, if you end up liking the show enough, I would recommend that companion podcast just for the extra little bits of info. I did watch episode 4, and it might be my least favorite episode so far, but I haven't been turned off completely by any of them. So that's just kind of like, it didn't move quite as good a pace as the last 3. But I'm still watching it, and I know Kelly is not completely invested in it, but she'll watch it with me if it's on. But she's not crazy about the show otherwise. But I'm definitely in for the rest of the season.
Yeah,
I did watch a couple of potential Broskers nominees. I'm doing some research on my end, and I finished Tar, and that one I might throw in a nomination for that one. And also All Quiet on the Western Front from Netflix, which you and I were talking before we recorded. What were your thoughts on this one? Because it's been getting a lot of buzz from Golden Globes and Oscars.
Yeah, I mean, I watched through the first 30 minutes and I turned it off. It was just the first scene was pretty good where they showed like the shirt get kind of recycled and then
Hmm.
put, you know, that was kind of that was artistic and it was interesting. And the way that they shot the first scene was pretty good. But after that, it just felt very generic and it felt very kind of like the movie. I could tell the movie was trying to make everything in a matter of fact, because the idea behind the movie is to show the horrors of war in a matter of fact way to kind of create this kind of emptiness, right?
Yeah.
I understood what they were going for, but in the end of the day, I felt as though it was just a very uninteresting war movie because I've seen so many war movies, and this one didn't really seem to do anything different than the other ones. Like I remember 1917 was pretty decent with the way that they shot
Hmm.
that film, but even that one was okay. I wouldn't watch it again.
Yeah.
But like some of the best movies are like about the narrative. Hacksaw Ridge, I really enjoyed. Even I watched that movie recently. What is the one with the? It was a I believe it was a Pearl Harbor one. It was one about the dive bombers.
And
With
is it told from the perspective of Japan?
no, it's I forgot. It had that Ed Screen guy in there. Ed Screen.
Okay.
It wasn't that good, but even that was kind of more interesting. The way that it was shot, and it was just more exciting, and interesting to watch. I don't know, maybe it's just the mood that I was in, but I didn't like it. I shut it off.
No, I get that. I didn't finish it. I was probably 40 minutes from finishing it. I thought it was lit beautifully, and I might put it up for that for cinematography. And there were some interesting shots too. I don't know if I can put it up for directing, but I think cinematography, I might throw it up as a Oscar nominee. But the story itself, man, it's like you said, it does feel very empty, and it was something that I was like, okay, I understand what it's about, and I can't take much emptiness right now. So it was just kind of like I'm not in the right mood, I guess, for that story, because it is
Mm,
just, it gets darker and not darker, but it gets more desperate and more desperate, and it just continues to spiral. I think you just keep seeing
mm.
tragedies, you keep seeing desperation, which is
Oh
fine. It's
yeah.
a war film. I get that, but
Well,
I just wasn't in it.
that's the problem I think with the film too. That's a big problem is that they didn't do a single thing to establish the characters or create like I feel like the movie just thinks that because you're showing the characters to you as the audience at all that you're expected to just have empathy for the characters just because they exist. But it's
That's
like
true.
no, it's like I don't know who these people are. I don't they're just generic people. Like I don't. It could be anyone. It's like you
His
didn't
whole
do it.
shtick was he's excited to go to war, and that was it.
Yeah, exactly. The characters are so flat. They're so impersonable that anything that they could do to the characters didn't have any effect on me. So I was like, yeah, I'm not interested in this. They haven't invested me in the first 30 minutes. I'm not going to even
Mhm.
bother.
The last one I'm about a third of the way through is Reindeer Games. I saw that it was on HBO Max, and it stars Ben Affleck. It's got Charlize Theron in it, and both very early on, or not early on in their careers, but much younger than they are now. And it's just kind of interesting seeing Gary Sinise is fucking in it. Have you ever seen
Hmm.
Reindeer Games?
I haven't. No,
Yeah, it's
it
pretty.
is recent.
No, it came. I want to say it came out in the '90s. I don't think it was the 2000s. The
These
Reindeer
are all
Games.
Oscars, though, right?
No, not that. I'm sorry. This one is not. This one came out in the year in the year 2000 exactly. And it's
Hmm.
not a Oscar movie, but it is something I've been watching. I do have another couple movies that I want to watch for the Oscars. It's just that I have to rent them on Vudu, and once you start the movie, you have 48 hours to finish it. And I know in the last 3-4 days, I'm not able to finish even a 2 hour movie
Hmm.
in 48 hours. So I've been stopping and starting the Reindeer Games, and like I said, I got about a third of the way through, which isn't even an hour. So, but that's another one I've been watching. But Oscars, I'm doing my homework on it, and we'll have nominees at some point next month.
A movie that came out recently I watched was Babylon. It was not good.
No, no good. Who stars in that? I feel like I
Margot
saw.
Robbie.
Oh yes, all that star power, right?
Well, just Margot.
I
Which I
thought
mean,
it had
yeah.
other people in it.
Let me look that up real quick because I all I remember is Margot, which she was good in the beginning, but then progressively got worse because she was given worse material
Yeah, it's got
as it went
Brad
on.
Pitt.
Yeah, him. Honestly, Brad has I don't know. He's not bad. I liked him in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
So good.
I enjoyed that movie, but he wasn't. I did not enjoy him in this movie.
Oh, that's too bad.
It was really good in the first act, I guess I would say, or even the first third of the movie. I would just say first half of the movie, and then it kind of just really spiraled off from there. I don't want to spoil the movie, but it's kind of like I think it's framing Hollywood is Babylon. Like it was better when it was like chaos and nothing made sense and everything was kind of like a happy accident. And then as things became more structured, it became worse. But the way that it portrays the story, I think, is not only incorrect, but I think it's just poorly done.
And it looked like an expensive film too. And I saw that it did not do well in theaters. That's crazy. Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie flop.
Yeah.
Even I saw the
star
trailer
power
and I
doesn't
didn't care
exist anymore.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, yeah, it doesn't pull in people like it used to in the 90s. I think you're right.
Well, it doesn't, because like you can put a star behind a project that people are interested in, well, a comic book movie or something like that. People will be really excited to see it, but they'll still be excited to see it as long as it's a comic book movie. But you put like a star behind this no-name movie that doesn't have any people aren't familiar with or has no like recognizability, and no one shows up because they don't care.
Yeah, it's a shame. But again, we will have a full slate of Oscars next month and hopefully some more better films than this other slate that we talked about earlier. Millennial Mike, I want to thank you. It worked out as it always does on the rotation that you were on to discuss this slate of films and you were on to hear about them for the first time. But please...
and to roast them.
Yeah, to roast, absolutely. It's a lot of fun. And there'll be more roasting to come as they start doing casting and little teasers and whatnot. But I want to thank you for being on this week. Oh, yeah, posters. Those are MCU-style posters are incoming.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
wait for it. But please let them know where they can find you, if anywhere, and if you have other projects in the works right now with Ronin Console.
I do. Sam and I have been working together on the first episode of this new season. So that was really exciting. So it was Sam, I, and Scott all together, which is really, really awesome. So it was a lot of fun. We were very talkative. We ended up talking for like 4 hours. So we're gonna have to
split it up.
Yeah, we're gonna have to, because it was basically 2 hours in the beginning for anime news, for Ronin news, and then for the Ronin anime discussion, it was like another 2 hours. So it works out pretty well that way. So if you're not interested in the news, or if by the time we release it, the news isn't relevant, you can just watch the second half.
There you go. So, and you can find the Ronin Console on all your favorite podcatchers, whatever you're listening to us on right now, you can find them on there. And yes, they are the same Sam and Scott that you hear on the show. So all familiar voices if you head on over to Ronin Console. But thank you again, Millennial Mike, for being on, and to you on the other side for tuning in for this week's episode, whether it's your first, if you wanted to tune in and hear some voices against this slate, or if it's your 548th. Huge thanks for being on this journey. I've been Daniel, joined by Millennial Mike and Brocat Core. All will be well. So the one character that you think, I'm going to put you as I know you don't want the job, Millennial Mike, but you are the head of DC Studios. Any fucking character or team that was not mentioned on here that you would have put on the slate to replace, for example, the Authority, which DC character or team would you have put in there?
Teen Titans is the first one that comes to mind.
Fuck it, or the Titans even, right?
Well, yeah, I mean,
but you would have gone specifically younger.
Yeah, I mean, because in my mind, the Teen Titans have always been the Teen Titans. I mean, back in the original comic, they were the Teen Titans, even though they were like 1920. Like Cyborg was like the oldest one there. He was like 20 years old in the Teen Titans, but yeah, no, I would have definitely done the Teen Titans. Obviously, make it more serious, make them older, maybe even have the Outsiders have some involvement in that too, because I always liked when they crossed over and whatnot. It was fun.
That's that's a really good answer, because I know I was sort of throwing in the Titans, but if you wanted to, years down the line, sequels down the line, as the actors get older, you can then work them into kind of like they did with the Young Justice, into now Robin is Nightwing. Now we've got an older Starfire, and there's relationships at work here. Raven has gone up against Trigon at this point, has all of these new powers that you can do a fucking universe on the Teen Titans.
Yeah, no, that seems to be, and it's also quite popular.
Yes.
And the Titan show didn't do terribly. I think it's still continuing. And if you had a higher budget, that could be cool. Although I guess the issue is that since it does still exist, there would be a conflict of interest there. But I mean, who cares at this
Titans
point?
is canceled. It officially got canceled. It's got one. This last season is it.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
So they're coming.
Well,
the Nightwing's coming. Like I said,
Red Hood is like the edgy profile pic of every like edgy 13-year-old
every time.
But if it's edgy, it'll at least get my attention. So that's a plus.
So Supergirl and Red Hood. That might be the key.
Let's go. Let's go.